Hello, everyone, and welcome to another surprise episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. And again, I say, I am not making this a daily podcast. Much like the president, I do not have the stamina to make that promise to you. But we do need to talk about this because on Sunday, July 21st, the President of the United States dropped out as presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party for the 2024 election. He had, of course, been facing Trump in an older rematch of 2020, and now he will not be. He released this statement on X. Then there was a follow-up tweet that said he endorsed Kamala Harris. It was not in the letter, which I found interesting. We have seen nor heard from him other than these two things, which I find weird. He didn't do an announcement to camera for perhaps the most consequential moment of his career. In fact, a historical moment. He has not been seen since. In fact, the last time he was seen was Friday, boarding a plane or deplaning. I can't remember which one, but Friday. And he's been in Delaware with COVID since. So we're going to talk about this for a few minutes and just see where the race is. By the way, we are now 8 days from an attempted assassination on Donald Trump, and it is like the third most important story. Which, by the way, it shouldn't be. The Oversight Committee is currently questioning Kim Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service. They should do so aggressively, although she's probably not going to say anything of substance because there's an investigation ongoing. But, there are at least 3 giant stories happening right now. So, Nick, how you doing?
Mary Catherine, let me tell you about my day. No, I'm just kidding. I know we're doing a lightning round today. I wanted to ask you, do you remember the ABC late night show Nightline with Ted Koppel?
I do, yes.
Do you remember how that came into being?
No.
The Iranian hostage crisis. And suddenly ABC needed to have a show every night to monitor. Of course, we have hostages right now, and we're not really doing the coverage of it is less than it was for the Iranian hostage crisis, but they just kept on being on every night. And as a result, that turned into the show Nightline. That's us now. We're just doing this emergency podcast every day, and it's turning into the daily Getting Hammered. And we promised it wasn't.
Special Report on Fox News has a similar origin story.
Really?
It's called Special Report because it was started to cover the Lewinsky scandal. And it was a special report upon that news. And then it just became Special Report forever.
That's very funny.
Even though it's everyday report now.
Is this going to be a moment where were you when during the Kennedy assassination, or certainly the attempted assassination of Trump? I was like, where was I when Biden dropped that? And I was at the Knights of Columbus bar trying to have finally a very relaxing Sunday afternoon. And I was telling 2 people there, a husband and wife, they get all worked up about the situation. They were talking about Biden. And I said, they're basically locked in with Biden now. He's hunkering down. He's going to stick it out. That by all accounts, all of his advisors, they're all saying
he was tweeting it.
He was tweeting it.
The advisors were tweeting it. He was saying he was going to campaign in Georgia and Texas. Texas, we don't know why.
Yes.
Georgia.
Yeah, I don't know why Texas. 1:16 p.m. getting an email from the Democrats fundraising to help elect Joe Biden. And I said, one of the problems that conservatives and Republicans have is they never enjoy these moments. They're so rare, but to enjoy and revel in the other side having this meltdown, and that, they're talking about a landslide and all the numbers coming out of the Michigan polls. And then suddenly the bartender announces that Biden is out. And I didn't believe him. I checked the phone. And then I turned to them and I said, when I said enjoy that moment, the moment is now over.
Yeah, no, so my husband broke the news to me, which is funny because I'm the junkie, right? But I was taking time off to sit with my kids after we went to a little birthday party in the morning. And I was just sitting on the couch, decompressing.
Finally.
And I get a text from my husband who just left for the gym that is just a news story. He's very just the facts, ma'am. Just a news story that says Biden dropped out of the race. And I'm like, what? So I go to Twitter and figure it out. Well, who might be enjoying the moment, I guess, is Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And look, I want to say that we were ahead of the times in being, watchers of Kamala,
That's right.
It's just, hold on 1 second. I do want to say, mea culpa, I was wrong. I thought he would hold on through the weekend.
Yeah.
I thought he would hold out through the weekend, and I do think that a lot of the reporting leading up to him dropping out was part of a coordinated pressure campaign to make this thing happen. Because
Yeah,
the thing we don't talk enough about in press and in journalism is, like, particularly when it's a democratic end being met, how much the press is just part of the story.
yeah.
Like, a lot of those
They're helping
reports
make it happen.
they were manifesting this
Yep.
in a very real way, and I'm not sure, like, it's weird that 12 hours before that, he was saying he's gonna go
Right.
campaign all over the place, which I think was delusional, but it is what it is. So, Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, I have been saying the most sensical and constitutionally approved of method here would be for him to step aside from the presidency, which I am not at all certain he's performing right now or doing his duties, and give her the presidency, which then would make her more plausible as a presidential candidate, would give them a little boost.
Yeah.
Look, doesn't work to my ends. I'm arguing against interest here, but I think for the country, that might be the right thing to do. They do seem to at least have settled on Kamala as opposed to a giant fight. That might not totally be true. We may
Yeah.
still have a power struggle here, but I was struck yesterday by how little my normie voter friends know about Kamala Harris. Like, she's
Really.
very much going to be entering this as a bit of a blank slate, although
Wow.
she shouldn't be because she was part of this cover up.
Yeah.
And that to me is an interesting point. But do you think they've settled on her? What do you think?
I think that so many people, just because of exhaustion, want to settle on her and they're willing to say, we're all in, and they don't want to have to deal with a fight with the people who feel very strongly about having her as president of the United States. And that would be a messy fight. But the thing is, if I were working on the Trump campaign or a Republican, I would be saying, all right, we've got all this oppo on her and all these great, insane video clips. We got to let it trickle out, because if we put out this onslaught of how horrible Kamala Harris is, not just in terms of all their various verbal gaffes, and she doesn't have any excuse, for that, but also really bad policy decisions going back to the time that she was California's attorney general, they might panic and switch her out too early before the window. So wait till she has the actual nomination, lock her in and say,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, world, this is what the option is right now. So,
No, can I
yeah,
say also, I would play you video of Joe Biden, which I cannot do because there is none. So I'll read a bit of his statement.
yes,
It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve you as your president. While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country. Interesting order there, for me to stand down
yeah,
and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. I want to even that out because he didn't speak, but I'm going to just read that for you. He says he had, like, the greatest presidency ever. I think
yes.
voters might have something to say about that. But I also want to play the ad that the Trump campaign put out
Oh,
immediately, which is somewhat heartening for those who are rooting for Trump,
mhm.
that they did have their eye on this ball to some extent. And it is an effective ad, which makes two arguments. And we can talk about those after it's played here.
Kamala was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president is in good shape, in good health, tireless, vibrant, and I have no doubt about the strength of the work that we have done.
But Kamala knew Joe couldn't do the job, so she did it. Look what she got done. A border invasion, runaway inflation, the American dream dead. They created this mess. Kamala owns this failed record. Make America Great Again Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So, one, she was part of the cover up of his health, which I think is inescapable. She's
Yeah,
on,
I mean, if the
she's on
press
video
wants to,
constantly.
if the press wants to continue doing their duty, they will want to hold somebody accountable, including the vice president, for all the times that she, went to bat for him.
And she did it over and over again. In fact, we should play a couple clips of that so that you guys hear.
We have a very bold and vibrant president in Joe Biden.
But a majority of Americans, a majority of Democrats, according to our new poll, say they don't want President Biden to run again. What do you say to them?
I mean, George, I think that age is more than a chronological fact, to be very frank with you. It's about thinking about whether we have in our leader, which we do in Joe Biden, somebody who is bold. I mean, think about it. And in Joe Biden, we have a president who is probably one of the boldest and strongest American presidents we have had in his response to the needs of the American people. But he is an extraordinary leader, and I wish that people could see what I see, because there's only one person who sits behind that resolute desk.
What that sounds like. She might be unsure on her rhetorical feat sometimes, but about the health of the president, she was not unsure. And she said she was meeting with him regularly. So that's one. Two, if anyone knows anything about her, to the extent they do, it's that she's in charge of the border. And that is a problem for her.
Yeah. Although they will say that, you know, the numbers are going down now. So yay, her. I do want to go back to the statement from the president.
Yeah.
Because two things. One, you talk about how he talks about his most amazing term, and people are really locked up on this, and including the Associated Press had a thing where they said, you might not like him that, but you're going to look back and realize how great he was. And then the other thing is he mentions the most significant climate change legislation in the history of the world. Yeah, that would be known as the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that. And the other thing is,
He said we have the greatest economy,
Oh.
strongest economy in the world.
oh, and here's another word he uses. I inherited this terrible economic disaster. It's not quite that way. And there are also people talking about the COVID policies and how he rescued the country from COVID. I'm pretty sure more people died on his watch than on Trump's
No,
watch.
there's a lot
There's
of
a lot to go on.
revisionism.
And here's what's missing from the statement, Mary Catherine, which is he never says why he's leaving. He just says it is, quote, in the best interest of the party, which to me is like an employer letting you go and saying, you know, we think it's best we part ways. How? Well, we think it's better. Well, why? What did I do wrong? Well, no, it just didn't work out, you know?
Yeah.
And so will he explain why? Because that's people are saying, as you know, if he's not well in 6 months, then he's maybe not well now. And if
Well,
he's
and
not
where
running
is
for
he
re-election,
now?
should he resign?
Where is he now? Jeff, his chief of staff, is making calls to people in the cabinet, to people on staff, his staff, both in the White House and the campaign, who have been going out on a limb for him throughout this last 3 weeks, were not informed before they saw it on X.
No.
That is, just to be clear, regardless of party, and Trump has done it too, and I've gone after him for doing it.
Yeah.
That is a jerk move. You do not cut these people off who have been doing your bidding to some extent, even if I think they were doing it misguidedly, but they've been working hard for you. They've been trusting you
Sure.
when you say you're sticking it out, and then you just get rid of that whole campaign without even talking to them. I understand you don't want it to leak.
That's the
But
reason why.
And is it the only reason why, though? Because what other reason would it be the chief of staff on the phone and not the president with all these people,
Right.
even after the fact?
That's right. It was basically Joe Biden and his other advisors, Ricchetti and Mike Donnellan. Not even Anita Dunn. As you know, she's an Obama person. So the leaking was a very serious problem, and obviously that had him all upset. And again, Joe should have taken my advice, and he should have tasked Hunter with plugging those leaks. He could have assembled a team. They could have called them the plumbers. It would have been great. But it is funny because Biden becomes more and more like Trump in this way. Not only, you know, does he call in the Morning Joe, and then he gets sort of the orange tan spray attempt, but now he's making these sort of termination announcements on Twitter.
It's true. It's true. You know, we saw a real turnabout for a couple of figures out here, including, let me just read some tweets from Joe Scarborough.
Oh boy.
Joe Biden puts country first and Republicans melt down. What a tell. Americans have been saying for years they didn't want the 2020 rematch. Democrats now give them a new choice.
The gaslighting is going to be relentless, Mary Catherine, for the next 3.5 months. I don't know if I'm going to survive it.
Al Sharpton called it a grassroots effort.
Yeah, that it is. Without involving any of the grass really per se.
Well,
I mean, this is a decision for the delegates to make. Really.
Here's my thing. Look, you can make an argument all you want that primaries are not the proper vehicle for picking candidates, and often I think you can get better results in a different way. The convention system in the Virginia GOP got us Youngkin, right?
Yeah,
there can be other ways
sure.
of doing this within a party. I think
Ranked
some of it
choice.
is crocodile tears to say that Republicans are like deeply concerned about Democratic primary voters' votes. However, you people have been lecturing us about democracy and what the voters want. And two, I don't like it when people change the rules in the middle of the game. I don't like that.
They get a do-over. I think our friend Guy Benson said this. It's an unprecedented historic do-over that they get. I've been calling it the old switcheroo. And again, but the press is by and large right now in lockstep because I saw Nicholas Kristof, talking about Biden's quote self-sacrifice. Yes, he did it strictly on his own with no pressure from donors or George
Oh, no, no, no.
Clooney.
Like, Jon Stewart 2 days ago is doing the timeline of how long he's been infirm, and it's been, at least 2 years. And then Jon Stewart, the day after he drops out, is like, legend. Okay.
That's it.
You can't. It's like, yes, we beat you with a rubber hose for
Right.
hours, but look how self-sacrificially you
Right.
bleed.
This isn't
Like, it's
Reagan. This isn't Reagan deciding that he wasn't going to, let's say, hypothetically run a third term if there was no, 22nd Amendment, and then deciding that he couldn't because he was not well, and having that record by, again, the gaslighting here by saying legend, they're building in this assumption that he was the most amazing president
Yeah.
ever.
Joe Scarborough, by the way,
George Conway called him a patriot for being
um,
so selfless.
the greatest. He's the
Yeah.
greatest. Joe Scarborough just, what, a month and a half, maybe a couple months ago,
Mhm.
was saying that this is the sharpest, best
Oh.
Biden he's ever known. He talks to him
Right.
all the time. Something changed. I am amazed how shameless people can be and just like completely
It's
flipping
amazing.
when needed. Anyway, but the larger question is like, does it work for Democrats? Right?
Yeah.
Because I look, I concede that voters don't care about the fairness of whether this should happen.
Right.
I don't think they care about that. Certainly not undecided voters who are just going to tune into this and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I guess I'll just catch up now. But I do think it's important to have rules for how we do these things and not change them in the middle of the game. And I think it's interesting to tell primary voters next time around, come on out and vote. At which point, why? So
Yeah.
there's that. But that doesn't change the fact it might work electorally
Mm.
because I'm the outlier for caring. I think Kamala Harris has many weaknesses. She does not have the primary weakness that Biden has, which is literal physical weakness and inability to do the job. Okay. However, she carries most of his other weaknesses forward.
Yeah.
Which is his record. The argument that campaign has been making, which is only threat to democracy January 6th, which I don't
Right.
think has been effective. She does not have what little strength he might have had in the Rust Belt. Now, she can fix that maybe with a vice presidential pick,
That's right.
but she's carrying a lot of baggage here, including the cover-up that I'm going to say possible, the cover-up that she was involved in.
Right. How does she answer that?
But I think, the press is going to be very easy on her to the point of almost like worship would be my prediction.
They're going to try to find the positives.
2, the party is so relieved to be out of the situation that they were in that activists, donors, and politicians alike are going to be like, let's just get on board, man, and feel good about it. That's what we're doing.
Right. I do wonder if a number of other prospective candidates are just going to decide to wait it out and not get involved and let her campaign go down with the ship, right? And then have a fresh start in 2028.
But does it go down with the ship, though? This is the thing I think. Look, I think Democrats should pay a price for the many giant lies they have perpetrated on the American people instead of just lecturing us about how everyone else lies. I think they should get in trouble for Russiagate, for lying about COVID science and going outside of their powers to keep us all in our houses and tell us not to go to work and stuff. I think they should pay for the Hunter Biden laptop lie, which borders on, dare I say it, election interference. I think they should pay for the fact that they covered up this president's health. Do I think they will? Not really. No, I'm not sure they will.
No, it's funny, Mary Catherine, because I wrote it down here in my little note here, which was that I keep thinking that, listening to this news and the problems of Biden, the cover up, and how, everybody was telling us he's totally fine, and then he's not fine, and then he's got to go, and then he's an amazing president, and then we have Kamala suddenly. And I say, it strikes me as such a cynical ploy what they're doing, because this is all about winning, and it's not about really the second priority.
It
is
has
his health,
nothing
but
to do with
it was about
what's right for the country.
the polling data after he secured that nomination, because again, they don't want to ever lose again. And I think, well, won't Americans see through this? And I also say here, but I think it might also work.
Yeah. I think it might work. It might work. Look, it is a tougher matchup for Trump, Vance, than what they were offered before.
Right.
For sure. Now, under the previous infirm candidate / president, the Trump campaign had soared in some calculations, some polls, to a 7-point lead in Michigan,
Yeah.
okay, including leading in the Detroit metro area,
Yeah.
okay? Now, the question is, does that immediately get clawed back? I don't know. You could have some polls in the next 2 weeks that say, basically, Democrats feel refreshed. They feel like they're coming home. They're like,
Right.
she's not my favorite, but I don't know that much about her, and, like, I'm willing to give her a chance. However, I think she needs to run not a small amount ahead of Trump nationally
Yeah.
to succeed in an electoral college win, right?
Right.
And the trajectory of this race has been up, up, up for Trump for quite some time. So you're not just faring okay.
Mhm.
You need to reverse the trajectory,
Yeah.
which is a large ask. I'll note one exception to the media treating her with kid gloves. By the way, this morning they were reporting on her calls that she had made to fundraisers. Here we go. One person familiar with the VP yesterday. Through all her calls at the Naval Observatory, Harris wore a hooded Howard University shirt, workout sweats, and sneakers. They got pizza and salad for dinner. She went with her favorite topping, anchovies. Okay, that is the kind of reporting that we're mostly going to get on
It's
Kamala
right
Harris.
up there. That's the equivalent of Chaka Chip, and everybody's saying, "Oh, he's
So
getting the
that's what we're going to
president's
get.
having Chaka Chip. It's
An
great."
exception, however, is this Axios piece, which is pretty extensive in coming up with Veep-like moments in her tenure,
Yeah, Access is doing great work.
including that she is really, really tough on staff to the point that she has but a handful left of those who started with her. And I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah.
like, what was it, 3 or 4? I mean, it's very low.
Very high turnover.
And to compare it to another figure, Biden as vice president over the same period of time had 17 of his 40-ish
Yeah.
staffers still on staff. So it's a big difference. But this is what struck me. Here's Axios, couple of anecdotes. In April 2022, Harris was the guest for a dinner at DC News mogul David Bradley's home, a salon-style event Bradley hosts with Washington journalists and newsmakers. Harris's anxiety about the dinner was such that her staff held a mock dinner beforehand with staffers playing participants, according to 2 people familiar with the event. Harris aides even considered including wine in the mock prep so Harris could practice with a glass or 2. They ultimately decided against it. She also was asked to do the gridiron dinner, which is a mostly off the record, very sort of locked down elite event of press and like politicians.
Yeah.
The gridiron dinner is very low stakes because almost nothing is getting leaked except for flattering good jokes that you told that a comedian wrote for you.
Right.
So she would have had a good time. There was no reason not to do that event. I'm surprised by her timidity. I mean, this is
Yeah.
very low stakes stuff. A dinner with a bunch of people who are just going to fall at your feet because you're VP anyway.
Yeah.
I just find this kind of surprising.
No, and you do get the sense that if you're in the staff, you're a member of the staff trying to prep her for this, there must be a lot of not only tension and stress, but fear and terror because they want to get it right and because she is extremely demanding.
A
Again,
demanding boss.
very high turnover. And there are, ex-staffers who were quoted in the mainstream media saying that after working for her, they literally needed therapy.
Yeah.
It was that hard
And
to
like,
work for
look,
her. So
No, there's no love lost between Karine Jean-Pierre and I. However, there was a story of her being dressed down by
Oh.
Harris to the point that other people were just uncomfortable watching it.
Yeah.
I think the way you treat your staff says something about you. I've always said that, frankly, Trump's treatment of his staff, sometimes firing them without
hard. Yeah.
talking to them,
Mhm.
sort of a one-way street on loyalty, that kind of thing. I think it reflects badly on people.
Yeah.
It must be said that his campaign this time around looks much different, right?
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see how a not very good manager, as I think it's safe to say that she is not,
Right.
creates and or retains an entire campaign that must be staffed out in the next 107 days until the election. And by the way, it's not 107 days. They start sending ballots out
Oh, sure.
way earlier.
How are
So
they
it's like,
supposed to do that if they don't know who's on the ballot? I mean, it's
well, I think they're gonna stick with her. That's my look.
yeah.
Although I said that Biden was gonna stick around, so don't listen to me, y'all.
But the clock is ticking. I do want to say that I was fairly prescient in the Weekend Beacon newsletter, which came out on Sunday morning. If you don't get it, please subscribe. And I basically hedged my bets. I said it had to do with Mike Watson's wonderful double book review on Taiwan. And I said, whoever the president is, he, parentheses, or she, We'll have to deal with the Chinese threat to Taiwan. And look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Look
Here,
at that.
here we are. But again, if they stick with Kamala, they're stuck with Kamala. That's all I have.
Yeah. And
know?
again, I don't know whether any of these other promising folks are excited to jump on
Yeah.
this ticket. I mean, it seems like a large ask, but it would elevate you very quickly. And honestly, you could probably blame it on Kamala anyway when y'all lose.
Maybe that's true. I mean, because they're getting very excited about. I don't know what your feeling is really quickly here, Mary Catherine, about who she will pick as her running mate versus who she should, because I think things would become a little bit more challenging for Republicans in
For
working
sure.
out the map if she decided to take Josh Shapiro, a popular governor
Very
from
popular.
Pennsylvania.
He's the Youngkin of the Democratic Party.
Yes. The problem, of course, is that he is a white man and Jewish. And
Yeah.
right now, that's not the most popular demographic within the Democratic Party.
Let me just say, and it's sort of unpopular to make this point, but it's just a real political point. If they hope, and to the extent that they've been trying to earn back Arab American votes in Michigan, and they've gone to great lengths selling out Israel to do so, and I think they're right that Kamala Harris is probably a better play to those voters. Do we really believe that they're going to make her running mate, no matter how advantageous in Pennsylvania, a Zionist, pro-Israel, Jewish white guy?
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
I'm just talking about their motivations, and I think that's
Right.
a real issue in that party.
Right.
Two, I think Andy Beshear in Kentucky or Roy Cooper in North Carolina,
A lot of Roy Cooper buzz right now.
could be advantageous. Beshear, not for his state, but for Appalachia. He's like made in a lab to be sort of a
Right.
moderate, unthreatening
That counters JD.
Democrat. Yeah, that counters JD. Roy Cooper, look, I think Southerners can get along with Appalachian Midwesterners just fine. And two, North Carolina. I think it's a stretch, but else it can matter.
Yeah. I mean, they might go in that direction. But again, even if they do, voters tend to, all else being equal, voters don't vote for vice presidents. They vote for presidents. And as popular and as well liked as some of these politicians are, you're still agreeing to between 4 and 8 years of Kamala Harris in order to get to your Josh Shapiro
Yep.
or to your Roy Cooper or Andy Beshear. And again, though, I mean, she may go with a white man to counterbalance. It was like it's the opposite of what Biden did, and they're so fixated on the identity politics. And of course, Barack Obama needed Joe Biden, but strictly just because he needed those sort of old white man bona fide creds, a guy who had been on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and Judiciary, not right a lot of times.
Incorrect about everything.
But
there.
Needed that to assure other voters, or
Joe-
so they thought. I don't think, I mean, Joe Biden did not ultimately need Kamala, but now he is. Here's a situation that we have. I was going to say he's stuck
Yeah.
with her. He's not stuck with her. He's gone.
Joe Biden,
yeah.
as just like on the Judiciary Committee and all these other places where he was wrong, but just
Yeah.
sort of there.
Yeah.
He is
And that was enough to reassure voters.
At the last, a witness to history in his own stepping down. I'm not sure how involved in it he actually was. I've got to run to do TV. However, I just want to say nobody who's looking to beat Harris, whoever, should feel too cocky right now. Like, I just think you got to go out there and do the thing.
No.
The Trump campaign should play like they're behind
Trump,
because this could be a lot closer.
Trump underdog is his best self. And that's how they have to go in and always assume that everybody, the media, everybody, there was a brief moment where they were kind of on your side, but not really. And now it's definitely not going to be the case. So we will see. I do hope that a lot of members of the media, might be wishful thinking, that they do still remain vigilant in finding out not just what Trump is up to, but what Kamala Harris is up to as well.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice.
Now, I do want to give a very quick shout out to listeners, Chris and Susie Ensign, who had us over for drinks the other night. We met their lovely family. It was great being there, and Chris made some amazing drinks that only gave me a mild headache the next morning.
Nice.
It's the sugar. It wasn't the alcohol, it's the sugar. But anyway, thank you, Chris and Susie. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. You could follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram, and you should, so you can see our shining faces when we get back to our normal recording. And lastly, I'm going to take us out with something a little lighthearted. This is Donald Trump doing something I've never heard him do before, which is make fun of himself. Take it away, Donald.
You know, I have to just interject. If you would turn off those cameras, because I don't want this. See the screen up there of me? That's very severe, that comb over. That's a severe sucker. What's with that one? It looks okay from the other side. But that is very severe. I apologize. Man, I looked up there. I said, whoa. Look at that. Wow. That's like a work of art.